Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast. This week, we're doing things a little bit different for this Thursday episode. We're going to talk about AI and deer hunting. Pretty interesting topic. To talk about this, we've got Mr. Mark Olis from Moultrie Mobile on the line. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing good. Happy to be on.
Yeah, glad to have you. We were just talking before we got started about how we need to link up for a squirrel hunt. Mark's got a squirrel dog, which is how you know he's legit. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing real well. I'm excited for the conversation here. So, Mark, we're excited to get you on the podcast. You know, Moultrie Mobile, we're excited to be able, of course, announce our partnership with you all. We've kind of mentioned it over the last few weeks, but kind of officially getting you on the podcast. And to be working with a brand who is literally right out our back doors. I mean, y'all's home office is 25 minutes from us, maybe.
Yeah.
And of course,
absolutely.
You live right next. You live in the same general area as well with us, so we're excited to kind of see that relationship be able to move forward. But since then, in using some of your cameras last year, we've had a lot of questions come up, and there's been a lot of new updates, new launches as well this summer with the new Edge 2 and the Edge 2 Pro. And I'm really interested in kind of getting a little bit more of the, I guess, technical understanding of some of the different products, but also your background when it comes to Moultrie Mobile. So could you maybe start us off with, you know, what is your position with Moultrie Mobile, and kind of introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So here at Moultrie, I'm a senior brand, communication. It's a long title, whatever. It's I work with, all of our partners. So, you guys and other partners and sponsors that we have. I'm that liaison for Moultrie to those groups. I also, work on all of our PR efforts and things like that. We work with an agency, Backbone. They're great. So I oversee that, media buys, things like that. So that's like the day-to-day in and out of kind of what I do here. And then, I'm also heavily involved in content creation here with the company. So, when we're in the field, we're shooting films and photography and all that, lifestyle stuff that we use in marketing materials. So I'm heavily involved on that side. But, most importantly, I'm an end user. I've been using Moultrie Mobile since 2016. That's before I worked here. So I've been a longtime user of Moultrie Mobile. So it's a lot of fun to be on this end, not only to see the innovation and development, but, to also, I was an OG, right? I was there in the beginning using the system and seeing where it's come to today it's been incredible. So it's a lot of fun from this view.
Mm-hmm. Speak about that. Talk about the innovation and seeing how it's transformed. One thing I'd love to kick us off with, which is the new AI.
Yes.
Specifically with the new app, the new cameras, and kind of what is this going to mean for the end user, for maybe being a little bit more effective, getting the right kind of photos they're looking for when they're actually running these cameras. So can you talk to us a little bit about the new AI software, and again, how is this going to be applied for the new users of the cameras? Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's we've got a couple. When you're speaking of the Moultrie AI, there's a couple ways we use that. The first way is on the server end. So once your cellular camera connects to the server, uploads images on the server, and when I say server, essentially I mean the app, right? Where you're actually interacting with the images. We have AI built in on the server. So when you think AI, think of like species recognition, right? So that when you have it on the server side, that now allows you to go in and say, I want to see specific images. You can choose buck only and press that. And in your gallery, you're only going to have buck images. You can do does, you can do bear, hog, coyote. There, people and vehicles. We actually have a lot of customers that use Moultrie Mobile purely as a security camera. And you can set that up. So with that AI, you can actually set up notifications on your camera. If a person or a vehicle is in an image, it will only notify you, send you a text message in that scenario. So that's why a lot of people like it for security, because the deer or the cow in the pasture, you're not getting notified for that. But hey, a vehicle or a person shows up, you can get that. So that's one way the AI works on the server side. The way it works, we also, so it came out last year in the Edge Pro, and then now we have the Edge 2 Pro. And those are the two cameras that actually have the AI on board. So it actually lives on the camera. And so what that allows you to do on that end is you can say up front, hey, instead of even sending me all the images, I just would like to see buck images, or I just want to get turkey images, right? So it's turkey season. Deer have lost their antlers. You don't care about deer pictures at that time of year. So you can click turkey, and it will only send you those turkey images. And so, one might say, okay, why would I do that? Well, you're not getting all the wind-blown images of tall grass. If you've got feeders, you're not getting all the raccoon images and squirrels and all that stuff that fill your gallery. So you can be a little smarter and say, hey, I just want these images. And that's going to help save on battery life as well, because it's not uploading as many images to the server. So that's really the AI, just as a rule of thumb in general, is species specific. So you're either telling the server or the app or the camera, depending which side you're on, like, hey, I want to see this species or this species. That's a really good way to think of the AI capabilities.
And you're able to run through that specifically on the app, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So regardless if you have one of the Edge Pro cameras, all of that AI is on the app. So you would go in your filters, it's called Smart Tags, and you can filter through species. You can even click on multiple species. So it's not just like use it for one and that's it. You can use it for as many as you want. And also on that Edge 2 Pro and the Edge Pro, if a guy's like, I want everything, I don't want to miss anything, that option's available too. You would just click the all activity function and you get everything, just like any cell camera does.
So another feature that I'm really interested in, and we've actually had a lot of good feedback from other buddies already using these cameras as well, along with us, which is the Smart Zone for the lack of detection when you're having windblown branches, grass, stuff that you thought you trimmed out of the way, and all of a sudden it happens to everybody, especially during thunderstorms, which we have a lot in the summertime, where you have these images blowing up and there's nothing on it. It's just because the wind's whipping around. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of the AI software, and again, how effective it could be for someone not wasting a bunch of images on stuff that they don't want to see, excluding any kind of animals? And we're talking about, again, with wind or specifically vines and stuff moving in front of your camera that you thought you might have trimmed.
Yeah, no, I could actually give a specific point. So Sunday, I was hanging some cameras on public land, and there was one spot where really good crossing. In fact, as I was walking through, 3 does run across the road right in front of me. And I'm like, well, see deer, it's got to be a good spot, right? So at least this time of year, I'm putting cameras on a lot of different spots, trying to narrow down where I want to focus come fall. So this one was in an area that kind of along a road, so it's open, right? So that means harsh sunlight. And the reason this time of year is so bad on those wind-blown images, it is that harsh sunlight. So the summer is the worst time of year to get those. In the winter, you don't get much of that. And all those, the cameras, we call them motion detection, but what they're reading is they're reading the ambient air temperature and the difference between that. So, an animal walking in front, well, when that sunlight's beating down on a side of a feeder or on leaves or grass, that temperature is hotter than the actual ambient temperature. So you get a lot of those misfires. So with the Edge 2 Pro or the Edge Pro camera, we do have a feature in there called Smart Zones. And, for anyone that's never used it, it's kind of like that security system model where you literally will have like the last image that your camera took will be displayed, and then it'll have like a couple dozen grids on there, like individual rectangle squares, if you will. And each one of those is a zone, and you can turn that on or off. So default out of the box, they're all on. Once you put your camera, get an image, you can then start saying, all right, this grass in the bottom is what's triggered. Every time it's blowing, that's what I'm getting. You can then go in and turn off those zones that are just in that grass area, but everything else still fires for the motion sensing. So that specific camera that I mentioned, I knew it was going to get false triggers. Like even when I was setting it up, and I made sure I had that thing pointed north to try to, just not get all that. But anyways, man, by the time I got home, I'd already had dozens of images of nothing, and I was like, man, I knew it. So I went right on the app and I pulled up the smart zones, and I literally, all those real bright, harsh areas, because it is filter shade too, I started turning those zones off, but I left enough zones where the trail activity is, I'm still going to get triggers. And I went on today and I didn't notice not even one false trigger. Now, I feel like I'll probably end up getting some, but man, I was blown away actually from that specific camera, how that really reduced that. And I got deer. I had 3 different deer come through this morning, and all of those triggered and sent me images. So it was pretty neat.
Yeah, I wish I had that on a certain camera I had on that food plot on the club.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. A storm came through and blew a limb down at the very top of the frame. You can barely see it. And I got like hundreds of pictures. And it was on an older Moultrie camera that doesn't have that. And yeah, I had to go out there and actually fix it, manually. But with the new camera, I can just turn off that square or whatever, deselect that square so it's not paying attention to that.
That's right. And that's specific to the Edge 2 Pro, the Pro model. So, yeah, the Edge 2 or regular Edge doesn't come with that feature. That is one of the upgraded features.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's innovative. Trail cameras, I'm not gonna lie. Trail cameras, I feel like have been kind of like bows for a long time. They come out with a new trail cam, and it's like, oh, it's a new trail cam. It's got better megapixels, whatever. But they're all pretty similar. But these are new features that get me really excited because it's something that's leaping forward, in my opinion.
Well, and something else about the Smart Zone that to me is something that people might not think about is the battery saving capability. If it's not taking images of those areas, that means it's less wear in the battery. And again, it should be able to last longer, that application as well, especially like in certain areas where we'll soak cameras for 4 or 5, 6 months, until the battery dies and go swap them out.
The one that I put out the other day, I don't plan on seeing that camera again until January, probably.
And to be able to have that feature on, again, the Edge Pro 2 and the old Edge Pro is so valuable if you're going to specifically put cameras in areas that are like hard to access, or they're in a different state, they're on a piece of public, they're on your lease 2 or 3 hours away. It's worth being able to upgrade to have that specific camera, which still is not very expensive relatively when you're talking about a lot of other different cameras in the market, but be able to have those features so that you're saving more battery life so it can stay out there longer. Because the problem is, and we've run into this in the past with other cell cameras, is you put it in a really good spot and it gets a lot of activity, but it's draining so much battery in that location that, we've had cameras die in the past, different makes and model cameras. That
3 weeks.
Yeah, die in 3 weeks of activity with brand new lithium batteries. So it's one of those things that it will help you be able to save more battery life and have a longer longevity with that specific camera in those spots you really don't want to disturb. You want to get the most information possible, the least amount of interference in that location, swapping out batteries and everything. And that's a massive feature, I feel like, again, moving forward for someone that's kind of on the fence about, what's going to be a good camera I can take and put in a place that I don't want to disturb. Well, that's a really good feature to have, and one reason they may look at the new Edge Pro 2.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. And to your point, and that's the big thing is like you have options. The Edge 2 will capture everything. You don't have as much flexibility like you do with the Edge 2 Pro. But yeah, the Edge 2 Pro is $40 more than the Edge 2. So it really is. It's like, all right, do I want more control or do I care? And that's really going to be determine what you do, because with the Edge 2 Pro, you absolutely, so another great example, I've got another camera, an Edge 2 camera out, and it's in the woods, but it's pointed towards an opening, so you get light in the day, and that's causing those false triggers, especially when the wind's blowing. And now that camera is about 50% battery life. It's been out now. It's been out for a while. I mean, and I say a while, like 6 weeks, something like that. But it is draining batteries a lot more than that camera, the Edge 2 Pro, where I was able to turn the smart zones off. So that camera is now not firing like it was where this one is. So to your point, the battery savings are tremendous. And again, you don't have to go to it. You actually have some control without actually having to physically be there.
Yeah, and I just learned something because I didn't actually fully realize that's how the sensors on these cameras worked. And so that's just a good battery saving tip right there, because exactly like what Jacob was just saying, the way that, like, when cell cameras very first came out and they were like $600 or what, they were like super expensive. Back then I was like, oh, I can't wait for this to get cheaper so I can get a bunch of these and put them. That immediately is where my mind went when they first came out, like 10 years ago or however long ago it was being able to put them in areas that I don't want to go to very often, but I want to gather information from in real time. And so battery life is a really big consideration there. Like, I don't want to have to, the whole reason I'm putting a cell camera in the spot is so I don't have to go in there and put my scent in and be invasive. So those are some, I didn't realize that's, one way that you can actually save battery life with like the little hot zones and everything. So that's really good to know. One thing I want to move into, again, staying, I guess, on the AI and just the software behind the cameras, is the game planning feature on the app, as well as spot patterns and whatnot. Can you just explain what that is and what you guys designed it for?
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, though, touching on battery life, to your point, that is, you set a cell cam out so you don't have to go to it. Just one thing for the audience, one of the biggest things you can do to increase that battery life is set your photo or video uploads to, like, maybe 4 times a day or 2 times a day instead of that immediate mode. That immediate mode, typically when someone's new to cell cameras, you're putting it on immediate because why would you not? But that is burning those batteries. Like, I can't even tell you how much longer the batteries will last if you'll take it off that immediate mode. Now, for a guy saying, hey, I want to run immediate, then that's where you want to get a solar panel. If you run one of the solar panel options, you literally will not have to go back to that camera and do anything. It's just going to continue. As long as it's getting direct sunlight on that solar panel, you can run that camera video mode, immediate, never have to worry about it. But to get to the game plan, so we launched Game Plan last fall. That was something that we had planned originally to launch a year earlier, but it just wasn't where we wanted it, right? It's like, we're not releasing anything unless it's right, it's exact. I mean, it 99% accuracy, those kind of things. So with Game Plan, it's the only dynamic deer prediction system. So we're all familiar with moon charts and the different things and apps and things like that. And those are all pretty much static data, if you will, like, hey, based on this, deer should move at this time. But it's just a general rule of thumb. So what Game Plan does, it takes localized, Moultrie Mobile camera info, the data. So it's anonymous. So it's not just looking at the cameras you have in your area. Any Moultrie camera in that zone, and that zone can vary between, a few miles to larger. If you go out west where there's not as many cell cams, it's going to have to expand out to get that data. So say you've got 10 cameras in an area, and then around you there's another 50 in a few mile radius. It's going to pull the anonymous data from all of those cameras, so not just yours. Now, you don't see anything. You don't see anybody's name. There's no information swap. That's just data that's coming onto the server anyways from the images. And what it's doing is it's using that AI technology to track deer movement only. So it's only honed in on deer movement. So none of the other critters moving about are impacting this. And it's pulling in that recent info. It's pulling it in localized. So it's, what's going on in Columbiana, Alabama isn't the same for what's going on in, Davenport, Iowa or something like that. So it's your area. and it's looking at that data. But this algorithm was a machine learning algorithm. So our team literally put thousands of data inputs to see if there was a correlation in deer movement. We already know when the deer are moving because we have that data, right? They go in front of your cameras, we get that info. So we know when they're moving. Now the thing was, what is correlating to that movement? So they input every weather input they could, every lunar phase. If there was not a correlation to deer movement, it's not in that algorithm. So there's no fluff. It was purely hard data. Did it correlate to movement? And then it's allowing that system to run and learn, and it gets better. So that's why it took 2 years before we released it. But the really cool thing is that on our end, that quickly became the second most used feature in the app last fall, where the gallery section being the most used, because that's where you're looking at your images and everything. So Game Plan has been a big success. And, like with you guys, I would say like this fall, really use that and then like see how it did. You know what I mean? Like see how were the deer moving during the daylight during that period, because it was pretty awesome this last fall. I was blown away by some of that.
Dude, that's crazy. That's super cool. The AI stuff is
there's another part to that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I didn't want to forget. When you drop a pin for your location, that's when it's going to know your area. Inside of Game Plan, there's also a part called Peak Movement. It looks at historical data from the years past, and the days where there was the most daytime movement, it will show you that peak. It says, okay, January 6th was your peak movement in the years past. So it also gives you that date where you can really like, okay, now we got a date. I need to be off work on around this time.
So let me ask you, for that peak movement and past year's data, even if it's your first year owning one of those cameras, is that still pulling information from any of the neighbors or anybody within that zone that has those cameras as well?
That's correct. It's using that historical data from the area, purely from the Moultrie cameras.
All right. I'm just gonna put this out there. Every listener in the state of Alabama that hunts public land, y'all all need to be using Moultrie. Yeah, because it's gonna help us all. It's gonna help us all, guys. It's that simple. It's that simple.
That's actually
we will all benefit.
We will all benefit. That's right.
And Moultrie will be very happy to.
Yeah,
Mark would be very happy.
Moultrie would really like us if y'all did that.
That's a great idea. I love it.
Dude, wow, that's fascinating. So, and the AI stuff, with AI in general, just, outside of even hunting, it gets a lot of talk about it these days. It's a really big subject. A lot of people are afraid of it. One thing about AI that's really, really interesting is that you're taking the human element out, and you can input as many data points as you want into this. And so when it comes to deer specifically, that almost makes it to where, in my mind, in a couple years, like think a decade from now, we're going to have actually really good data sets that we can look at to, I think, accurately answer, does the moon actually have an effect on deer movement? Like we're going to have so much data over the next 10 years about that it's something that like a normal human brain would be very difficult to do. If you get a whole team of grad students and PhDs and give them 5 years to look at this, the AI can intake infinitely more data than, people doing it. Now, like PhD people, they can use AI, but I'm saying just like the way that someone would have done this 10 years ago versus what people are going to be able to do now is just kind of like mind-boggling. And you just had a grin on your face.
Yeah, which, Mark, I got to ask, you talked about this was machine learning, which you're using for the game plan. And one thing I'm curious, was there any features or any weather patterns, anything specific that stood out of like, hey, there's a commonality between deer movement and what the software and what the AI and the machine learning actually was telling you guys?
Yeah, so and it's I mean this is something that a lot of hunters understand, but definitely those drops in temperature correlate big time to increased deer movement. That one alone shows over and over and over again the deer get up and move when that temperature drops, and it doesn't have to be like this time of year. You know, if it the temperature drops 10 degrees, as the high or the low, that's enough. So it's not like it's not a magic number. It's a difference in what it is currently, if that makes sense.
Yep. So if it's been 100 degrees and all of a sudden it's 89 degrees, they're going to move, right?
Absolutely. Well, and funny thing, here we're local, so we know the weather. Just a few weeks ago, it was just god awful jungle weather. Just terrible. And, so I knew what the deer were doing just, because I'm looking at my app each day. These last, this week where at night the temperatures are a little cooler, the humidity's down, I have seen an increase in deer movement on my cameras. Now, it may be at night still, but I'm starting to now catch some new bucks that are kind of moving about, right? Like I didn't have them on camera, but even they're feeling a little more like, hey, it's a little more comfortable. Let's go check out some stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, actually, me too. These last couple of days, because we had a little bit of a cold front these last days in August, which a cold front for us here in central Alabama, it was like 65 before, like at daylight, which you walked outside and I was like, Tiff, coming outside, it's like almost cold out here.
I was the same way. I mean, I could feel it. I was like, ooh, windows are down, going to work.
Yeah, baby. Man, oh my gosh, that's cool. Yeah, it's going to be interesting over these next couple of years again, is because again, just to like state what this is actually doing, you're pulling data points from every single Moultrie camera that's out there. And I know that y'all sell a lot of cameras. So, I mean, that's a lot of data points coming in from a lot of different locations.
A ton of data. And you guys will see, like, there's going to be some cool new features and things that come out more based off of the data coming in. When we originally started, right, it's like, hey, I want my cell cam images on my phone so I don't have to go there. And to your point, the data is so valuable. We just got to keep being, smart and innovative in ways like, all right, what about this? Can we harvest this data to tell us this? Or, so there's going to be some neat stuff that comes out here in the future based off of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we did some podcasts earlier this summer with Mississippi State, Dr. Bronson Strickland from Mississippi State on their GPS caller studies. And they learned so much from that. And to give, again, just more perspective, that study was like, somewhere in the ballpark of like 80 deer that had GPS collars on.
60
deer that had GPS collars on for, I think, 2 years or 3 years. 2 years, they were collecting data points on 60 different deer. Well, if you guys have, I don't know, 50,000 cameras out in one area, like one region, that are taking data points every single day, like you already right there have exponentially more data points on these deer than now the GPS is tracking all the movements of the deer, obviously, like all hours of the day, but this is like a different kind of data where you're getting the deer typically in spots where you would actually hunt them, right? So you're getting them on the food sources, you're getting them on the trails, you're getting them on the scrapes, in areas like, some of us weird people crawl up into thickets and put cameras like all up in the thickets where you wouldn't really hunt, but most people don't do that. So you're pulling data points from pretty much hunting locations or locations that people could hunt and using that to analyze, like, hey, when are these deer on the scrapes? When are they on the food plots? When are they traveling on the trails, going through the travel corridors? So it's going to be interesting to see, one, like you mentioned, the cold fronts, that's kind of confirmation of something that we already knew. I'm very curious to see, I don't know if you have this yet, but if not, in the future, some of the unexpected things that you see going into the future of like, oh, hey, we've noticed that this correlation is coming through. Because again, that's something that I see in the future. The AI is going to be able to see past like a human bias, like what me and you are looking for in the data. And it's just going to tell you exactly what's there because it's a computer, it's a machine, that doesn't have an opinion of whatever, it didn't grow up hunting with guys telling them like, oh, there's a full moon, it's going to be this. It's just telling you what the data actually bears out. So anyways, I'm nerding out about it. I'm pretty pumped.
That's awesome. I love it.
I've got, Mark, I'm just going to put this out there, and if you tell me we need to cut this out later because it's that good of an idea, we can do that. But I think a feature y'all need to add on the data collection side, it'd be interesting if you could tag cameras for like what it's sitting over. And I think there's two different categories. One would be over a food source, whether it was a guy in private put over a corn pile, a feeder, a food plot, something like that. But also one where you could put it over and tag it as a scrape, and specifically have that machine learning, the AI software or AI, just the device, whatever y'all are using, specifically looking at scraping activity where people are tagging cameras specifically over scrapes. That's the majority of what we put our cameras on. And seeing when that spikes compared to all the other movement, and that could be something else that could be used specifically on telling guys, hey, if you are going to hunt at scrape in this area, based off all this data, and people are tagging cameras specifically saying it's over a scrape, this is when we're seeing a spike of scrape activity and scraping activity during daylight hours. Would be very fascinating, probably fairly easy to use. I mean, it'd be some back-end work, but it seems like the baseline for a lot of that stuff's already there. It's just implementing the tagging process for those cameras where people are able to do it through their app, and then where y'all can, break that data out on the back end of it. But I think that would be very fascinating, and to be honest, would be something just from a podcast episode standpoint, I'd be interested to see what that data would look like a couple of years in the future based off peak scrape movement and activity in and around different periods of time of the rut, pre-rut, post-rut, all that kind of stuff. I think it'd be fascinating to see that, and also something hunters can use.
Absolutely. No, that's a great idea. I really like that. And to your point, yeah, probably pretty easy to do. So I was taking notes while you said that.
Sweet. I'm excited.
Nice.
I'd love to transit. Well, Andrew, do you have anything else on this topic?
We're going to talk more about the scrapes specifically in the back half of this podcast because, spoiler alert for the listeners, it is August 13th right now, and I've got bucks working licking branches like crazy on multiple properties across Alabama, public and private. So we're going to talk about that in the outro, but right now they're hitting licking branches. So you can actually utilize that right now for buck inventory. But anyways, we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
I'd love to talk, Mark, or have you maybe talk about some of the new features on the two new cameras, again, the Edge 2 and the Edge 2 Pro. What's kind of updated, what's kind of changed from the original Edge and Edge Pro, and what can customers be looking at specifically, not only on the new features, but also some of the price points as well?
Yeah, so the original Edge was the first one out of the Edge series, and that camera, the Edge camera, our team, where most times you look at what technology is available and you say, okay, let's put the newest technology in a camera, boom, there it is, you sell it. We approached the Edge and said, okay, if we're going to make a camera, like, how can we make it the most simple, easiest setup, least, frustrating thing? What are the pain points, right? And how can we remove those? We need to build a camera that actually removes the pain points. So that's what we did with the Edge. So one of the first things on the Edge you'll notice is the auto connect. So auto connect means simply it will connect to the 4 major U.S. cellular carriers, and it automatically finds them. There's no SIM card to pull out. You don't swap something. You don't touch something. You just turn it on, and the camera does that. So the auto connect is huge. One of the other things, too, with the Edge series is the Edge lineup, based off of like our past models, it also is the most efficient working camera in low signal areas. So it will work on a lower signal than like our older models. So, and that's one reason, I'm able to put the Edge in so many places that I never was able to run cameras before, is kind of due to those. The other thing we did was we removed the SD card. So it's all internal memory. There's not even a slot for an SD card. And the reason we did that, we at Moultrie, the biggest thing we do is listen to the customer. And we have a customer service department. It's huge. You can reach them on the phone 7 days a week. It's one of the things that I hear from the most from customers is like, man, I had an issue with this camera. I called customer service. They got it up and running, or they sent me a new one, no questions asked, whatever. But every time someone calls in and it creates what we call a ticket. So we log all of that data too. Like, okay, what was it for? What was happening? Camera wasn't working. It wasn't sending, it's all this stuff. And we look at it, and on past models, one of the biggest problems with people not getting their images was the SD card. Either it was the wrong SD card, it needed to be formatted, it was corrupted. SD cards it's pretty cheap tech, right? So they turn them out like potato chips. So having an SD card having one being messed up isn't, that's pretty common. So we just remove that to make it simpler, easier, more reliable. So the Edge camera, again, because we track that data, the amount of tickets we've had generated for the Edge series cameras it has blown away our past models. I mean, it's been exceptional. So the Auto Connect SD card, that's on the reliability side. And then you'll notice there's only a couple buttons. One's an eject button, one's an on button, and one's a connect button. So again, how can we streamline this, make it simple? And so everything's done from the app then at that point, all your settings. So that was the Edge. It's been a huge success, the Edge series camera. So this year, last year we launched the Edge Pro. The year prior was the original Edge. And this year we launched the next generation of both of those. So we've got the Edge 2 and the Edge 2 Pro. You'll find the same features, the Auto Connect, no SD card, all of that stuff. Kind of the biggest difference that I would say the big bang is you now have on demand for both of those cameras. So now you can, through the app, you can say, all right, I want this camera to take a picture or a video right now and send it to me immediately. So you now have that capability on both the Edge 2 and the Edge 2 Pro. Let's see, Edge 2, it does have a little bump up in megapixels. It has a faster trigger speed than the original Edge. It's down to, I think, 0.3, 0.4 seconds, something like that. 100-foot detection and flash. I believe the original Edge was around 80 feet. And then when you get into the Pro model, the Edge 2 Pro, it has the on-demand as well. It has the onboard AI like we talked about, like the original Edge Pro. So you've got your smart zones, your smart captures, all that. It has the Bluetooth live aim. So when you're at the tree putting it up, you get a live feed on the app. So you get that camera aligned perfect. And then the other new addition to the Edge 2 Pro is it now has GPS on board. So instead of having to go to the app and manually pin your location in the maps section, this now pins it to the maps automatically. So you've got it, you're good to go. You don't have to press any other buttons. And then this one also has the no detect IR flash. So whereas the Edge series, you get a little bit of that red glow, you won't find that on the Edge 2 Pro. So those are kind of the big differences. Definitely both cameras, the on-demand would be the biggest new feature. And then with the Edge 2 Pro, you've also got that GPS and the no-glow IR lights.
So I want to ask you, because I've had a couple people ask me this question. I was going to say I was going to wait for the podcast. On the Edge 2 Pro with the GPS capability, where it drops your pin on the map so you don't have to pin it for your location for the camera, does that also work? If someone stole your camera and left that camera on, could you see live on the app where that camera is located at?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if it's on now. If it's off, it's off. You won't see it because it does require power to run that. But if it's on, it will update. So when that camera checks in, it's checking that location as well. So 100%.
All right, cool.
Yeah, you go up to their house, be like, "Give me my camera back."
I hear that a couple times. I've heard that from other people. I've never had a camera stolen. I've had a couple of SD cards get taken, but never had a camera stolen. But I've had people bring that up that like if more cameras had that feature, because typically, what I've seen in the past, someone's cell camera gets stolen when the perpetrator, whoever stole the camera, they're going to turn it on at some point at their house and mess with it and kind of figure out what they could do with it.
Yep.
And if they do that and it sends that image, you see exactly where they're at, dude. It's game over, man.
Got 'em.
Hey, we had that happen. One of our other partners last year had that exact scenario, and the guy, of course, turns it on at his house in the comfort of his home, and boom, got a picture of his face. He ended up knowing who the guy was from the community and got a hold of law enforcement and got his camera back.
There you go. Listen, got your back. Now, also, one thing that I've really enjoyed about the Edge and Edge Pro, but again, both of these cameras, even like the older models, the original model Edge and Edge Pro, is the no SD card feature. Okay, like you mentioned, that having the aspect of like corrupt cards, like Michael Pike was just on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about he had some non-cellular cameras. He formatted cards, he put them out, left them for 6 months. When went to pick them up, the SD card was messed up. He didn't format it correctly, and it never saved any images on the SD card. Okay, and I think we've all had situations like that in the past. You know, you buy SD cards, you get the wrong class SD card, whatever the issue is, and it doesn't work, or you just forget the SD card. There's been many times, like when I was in Arkansas last year, running a bunch of non-cellular cameras and a mix of a couple cellular cameras, where we realized while we were out there in the boat dropping cameras off, we did not have enough SD cards, so we had to actually put out the cameras we did. We had run back, go get more SD cards, come bring them back out in the field, which is just a hassle. But one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is if you don't have an SD card in your camera, a random guy walking up to your camera on public or private, he can't check your SD card. So he doesn't know necessarily what's there. Now, he can steal a camera if you wanted, but he can't check the SD card, which I think that's something a lot of the public lane guys may appreciate. But also, if you're in a hunting club or a lease and you got a couple guys in that lease or hunting club that you don't necessarily trust, and maybe they're a little notorious for keeping a SD card reader in their bino pouch or in their backpack, they're not going to be able to check your camera, which to me is a really big feature from not letting the other people in that area know exactly what you have on camera. So just from like a safety aspect of that, like keeping it a little more concealed, I feel is like a really big feature that I think some people may overlook, which is something I really like about those cameras.
Yep.
I totally agree. And I've heard that from numerous people. They were excited about that because they're like, great, no more stolen SD cards.
Yeah. I found one of Shane's cameras the other day, and his SD card was gone. Camera on a scrape, placed by God in this spot. It's the perfect scrape, man. And his camera had been soaking on it for a long time. And I was going to check it for him, popped it open, SD card's gone. I'm like, just take the whole camera at that point. Like, I get so upset about it. Me and Shane were kind of laughing about that. I was like, I would almost rather them just take the whole camera. Like, the SD cards was valuable. I can go get a new camera, but I can't get that time back that I let this camera soak on a scrape where it sat there through the whole rut, and, we don't know what was on it. So, yeah, that was a big selling point for me, too, is just getting rid of the SD cards. Like Jacob said, being a little more secretive about everything,
But no, for sure.
And all with the cell cams, all your images are living on the app anyway. So, I'm one, I don't delete images. I don't go through and do that. I know a lot of guys like to keep a clean gallery, but I've got images from 2016. I went back just the other day to see if they were still there, and they're all still there. So, and that's one of the things that Moultrie's different about than maybe the competition. We never delete images. We view those are your images. We don't mess with them. We don't delete them. You don't have to pay more to keep them for a few months longer or any of that stuff. So, they're always there. Either you delete them or they stay there.
So one thing I wanted to mention and have you touch on was just the price point of the new cameras, both the Edge 2 and the Edge 2 Pro. Where are those going to kind of sit when it comes to, someone want to go to a local sporting goods store, order them online? Where does that look like right now?
Yeah, so both the cameras come in at great price points. So the Edge 2, the MSRP on it is $99.99. So it's $100, just like the original Edge. Even though you have the upgraded features, the Edge 2 Pro We brought that one in lower than what we brought the Pro in last year. So the new Edge 2 Pro is it's right at $139.99. So last year's Edge Pro, it MSRP'd at $180. So we were able to get the price down $40 and add new features.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'll say this right now, y'all may not be advertising it, but y'all have some screaming deals on the original Edge and the Edge Pro right now that I've seen, like screaming deals, like insane deals right now too.
Whenever this goes live, like go to our website. Right now is Bass Pro's Fall Hunt Classic, and that's the catalyst for all this. Go to Bass Pro. You can go in the store, online. Go to moultrieproducts.com, where it's all over the place. I think the original Edge is like $59 right now. And I mean, I run a ton of those. I love that camera.
Oh yeah, we have a couple of those out right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to keep track of all of them at this point.
No, but it's just that's the one thing I'm excited, especially about working with you guys, is it's a product that, again, we've used this past year. We really liked it, but also the new features are really excited to kind of use, especially like the game plan feature this fall, and kind of seeing how that may help us, and also how it may coordinate or correlate with what we've seen in certain areas as in activity in specific spots, and how those dates line up. But also, again, the price point of everything. Again, if someone's getting into cell cameras, they want to mess with them. They don't want to spend $200-$300 on a camera. For that amount of money, you could buy 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 of these cameras. You find a screaming deal. When they, especially like the original Edge is on sale. You could literally have you multiple cameras put on your hunting club, your lease, or some public land, and get started as getting your toes kind of wet into cell cameras. And again, seeing how maybe it saves a little bit more time of not having to run check cameras, but also able you to keep tabs in certain areas. Or if you're just going to use it for security purposes, again, put it in your driveway. Again, Mike, Andrew's stepdad was talking about getting a couple just to put on the driveway, specifically for the feature on people walking up, or also vehicles coming up with the new Edge Pro too. So there's a lot of interesting aspects about the cameras that we're excited about, and some of the technology behind it that I think is going to be not only more useful for us this fall, but also for the listeners. Some of them that are on the fence, it amazes me how many people, because we were like this in the past too, how many people will have multiple different brands of cell cameras. And a lot of times it's because they find a good deal on them, and then they ended up having all these different apps they're trying to run at the same time, trying to keep tabs of all their cameras. But it's interesting when you can find a brand that you really like that fits your price point. That also a big advantage, which we kind of touched on earlier, but I don't think people understand how big advantage this is. These cameras are working off all major 4 national sale providers, which is huge, because in the past, all of our cameras typically in the past have been, you had to pick Verizon, AT&T, one of the two. Yep. And there's areas that we hunt that, come to find out, once you get in there, AT&T is better than Verizon or whatever. Well, now it doesn't matter. You can get this one camera, and it doesn't matter where you're at. If there's any cell signal, it's going to connect automatically for you, which is massive.
It's huge. I totally, you no longer have to select what you're going with. You're not pigeonholed whatsoever.
And then, Mark, I'm trying to think, is there anything that we've missed specifically on this conversation, or things that you're excited, again, with people kind of getting their hands on some more of the products, using maybe any other things specifically on the app, the new updates y'all have done, anything like that that's worth noting?
Yeah, well, definitely on the app. Sticking on the product side, along with the Edge 2 cameras that came out this year, we've also got 2 different solar panels that come with it. There's a smaller one, and then a one that's double that size. Both of those have their own onboard lithium batteries that it charges, and then charges the camera. We also have 2 options of rechargeable battery packs. So honestly, to me, one of the biggest game changers is the rechargeable battery packs. I started running those last year for the first time, and I think just a week ago was the first time I actually had to put 16 batteries in a tray, and I was like, what a pain in the butt this is. Like, I didn't even, you're just used to doing it, and then now you just pop that battery pack out, slap a new one in. It's like changing a mag in a gun. I mean, it's incredible. And they work so much longer. Like I'm using the rechargeable pack from last year. So you're not buying AA's anymore. Those rechargeable packs are lithium, so they work great in the cold weather, which is really important, especially as you start going north. But those alone have been huge. I mean, you want to talk about saving money. If you're on private and you've got places to run solar panels, my gosh, buy it, because that will pay for itself in the first season, and you'll never have to go mess with that camera. But in the woods on public land, I'm not running solar panels and trying to be flashy. So those packs, man, they are incredible. And like this weekend, I went and put out some new cameras, and I had a couple I needed to swap batteries on. Man, I just pop it out, new one in, turn it back on, and I was gone. So I'm not leaving a bunch of scent in the area, hanging out, sweating, and all that stuff. So those have been good. We also have for areas where food plots are, we've got a new camera stake, and it's designed. Our older camera stake was really just designed for the camera. This new one's designed, you can run 2 cameras, but you can also run that big solar panel on there. So it's got more room, it's beefier. It's got a couple telescopic sections, so you can really get your height like you want it. So those accessories are huge. And we've got a flex mount accessory that will work on any of the edge cameras, literally slides into the notch in the back, and that gives you full left to right and up and down. So you can literally have that camera perfect, just like you want it. So I would definitely say that. But on the app side, we were talking earlier, as you guys noticed, it's got a new look. It's just had a whole refresh, redesign. And again, that goes back to what the customer has been telling us. Hey, I like this in an app. I like this. Why don't you have this? All that goes on a list, and it gets prioritized and worked on. So, we've got over 30 or maybe even 40 app developers that are here at Moultrie Mobile. So it's not a third-party app. We built it from the ground up, so that way we can control every aspect of it. We can change and maneuver things and be a little, quicker on that end. So there are absolutely new, one of the new things, there's albums now in the new app. So you can create albums, however you want to, maybe of specific bucks, maybe it's deer from a certain property. So you have the ability to create those different albums now. Also, we've got a new kind of redesigned save search. And the best way to think of that is, like, especially you guys are hunting this public land, this property. You can utilize that save search and select the cameras you want for it. So say, all right, I want one for the management area. I'm going to click these 5 cameras that are out there. And now you can go and click on that, and you'll only have those images in that saved search. So if you're like, hey, I just want to see my river deer today, you can create that search, click on it, and now all those images will be in there as if that was like your normal gallery. So that's another big addition. So you can kind of separate things into properties, if you will. And then the other part on the app that we haven't touched on was the activity charting section. So whereas game plan is a predictive model looking forward, activity charting is looking backwards. And it gives you really cool, easy to read graphical layouts on, when deer were moving based on temperature, time of day, things like that. So you can really get an idea, and you can select date ranges as well. So you can say, hey, I want to see what were they doing last week. And you'll see and get those readouts like, wow, 8:30, 8 in the morning, there's a lot of activity happening, and so you can kind of plot that out. Also, in the app, you have the ability to create custom tags. And the reason I say that is, we all like to find big bucks and give them names, right? We come up with names for them and we name them. So now you can actually create custom tags for those individual bucks. And you can then once you create that tag, it lives on there. So you don't have to keep creating it. And so what you can do is anytime you get an image of that specific buck, you just apply that custom tag you created with his name, and now you're tracking that image. So now you can go back to activity charting, and you can actually click, I want to see activity for this tag, and you're going to see that buck's movements. So you can really start dialing in on specific animals with this kind of technology. Like, you can use it just to view your images, or you can absolutely nerd out, geek out on the data and what you want to do with this. System is built for every deer hunter, no matter how advanced or entry level.
All right, Mark, we're going to create a tag for Andrew's favorite deer named Steve. God. All the listeners know who we're talking about. That was the first thing that came on my mind.
I got a 10-point. I've been hunting for 2 years, and Jacob, he's like, you got to quit calling him the 10-point. You got to give him a name. And so Jacob named him Steve after my father-in-law. So I lost the battle. I said we weren't going to do it. Now, dude, I've had so many listeners either come up to me at shows or message me, and they're like, we posted that reel the other day, and they're like, is that Steve? I'm like, oh my gosh, man.
Yeah, it's stuck. So we're going to have a Steve tab. I can't wait. Oh, that's going to be great.
Oh, that's goofy.
Yeah. Anyway, right. But Mark, no, that's awesome. Also, one thing you didn't mention, which I actually had here pulled up, for the guys that are hunting private in states or areas where you can bait, y'all have your new feed hub. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because, again, Andrew's on some private, but his private they're not allowed to bait on. I don't really have much private other than a family farm, which I might hunt once a year. But we do run feeders down there. How does the feed hub work, and what kind of advantage is that for someone who's actually running feeders on their property?
Yeah, so no, I appreciate that. So Feed Hub it's the first of its kind. We took the cellular connectivity and added it to feeders now, specifically Spincast feeders at the moment. So we have a couple options for that. We have a cellular timer that it's a universal model. So not only will it work in Moultrie Spincast feeders, it actually will work in all the major brands of Spincast feeders. So you can buy that universal kit. It's like $100, $99, and you can install it in your non-Moultrie or Moultrie Spincast feeder. So you don't have to go out and buy a whole new feeder to use this. We wanted to create it where you can use it on an existing model. So we have that universal one, and that works in conjunction with a feed level detector. And that feed level detector mounts on the bottom of the lid and faces down into the hopper. And it uses a laser aiming device, and that maps out. When you install it, you would want an empty hopper, so it can calibrate what that hopper size is. That way, when you fill it, when you go on your app, that feed level detector communicates with the cellular timer that is in the actual motor housing of the Spincast feeder, and it gives you your feed level reading. So you actually, if you go to the device page, you'll notice there's cameras and feeders now. And if you have Feed Hub, you click on the feeders, and in your devices, instead of seeing a camera, you'll get a little readout. It's got the hopper, so it shows you your feed levels immediately. It also shows you your battery life on not only the feed level detector that runs on 4 AA's, but also your 6-volt battery that you have hooked up to your actual Spincast feeder. So once you have Feed Hub installed, all of your settings are done from the app. So you can change those remotely anytime you want. You can also you have the ability to feed on demand. So you can click feed on demand, and it's got a little bit of a lag time, but because however many seconds or minutes, it's looking for a command. So when it does that, it'll take that on-demand connection and then actually dispense feed. So you can do it from the stand, you can do it at home, whenever you wanted. So it just gives it, what it does is it removes that like stress of maintaining your feeders. And I know that sounds funny because, if someone doesn't run a feeder, they don't really know what I'm talking about. But, up until Feed Hub, I had to go to my hunt camp. I had to open the lid. I had to look in to see what I had. It was a very manual process. All right, that was typically after my first hunt on a Saturday morning. And now I'm like, crap, these feeders are almost out. By the way, the feed store in town, 25 minutes away, closes at noon. Now I'm scrambling to get over there, pick up corn. Now I got to fill feeder. So it's all this like stuff where you didn't plan for that weekend to fill feeders, but here you are, having to rush to do it. So now you can just plan your time better. I mean, we're all strapped for time. So any way you can plan out your schedule a little more, FeedHub will allow you to do that.
So I guess growing up with my uncle, he had he had some Moultrie feeders, but he made a bunch of other Spincast feeders out of 50 gallon drums, steel drums. And the issue I think he always ran into, and something I'd love to talk to you about, is malfunctions with the feeder, not knowing, like you said, visually go down there and inspect and see if there's any issues with the spinner device, like a raccoon got a hold of it, or if there was moisture that got into the feeder and it just wasn't throwing anything out, it all kind of clumped together. Is there any sensor specifically in regards to like if any moisture got into the feeder itself and clogged up the hopper? Is there anything that would notify you about, hey, there's an issue there, it's not actually dispensing any kind of corn or feed or whatever you're putting out?
There, absolutely, yeah. So it does have. You will get an alert on your phone, like a text message saying, feeder clogged, something like that. So, or if it's jammed and that plate's not spinning, you'll absolutely get an alert. And the way it does that is that the cellular timer is reading the the electrical outputs and things like that. So a feeder that's spinning without anything falling in it spins really fast because there's no resistance to it. So, and then one that's jammed, it's getting an electrical current, but there's nothing going. So it will absolutely send alerts for things like that.
Yeah, again, super handy. And if you're a guy that's got some private land and you're running, feeders, especially if it's not close to you. Again, if your lease or your property's an hour plus away, that'd be super nice just to make sure that everything is working properly if you are running feeders on a property. And if there is anything that arises, again, be able to take care of it in a timely manner and know ahead of time what you're probably going to get into, but also knowing your feed levels. So again, if you are consistently, feeding throughout the summertime, springtime, fall, everything, making sure you know exactly when you should make an order or a shipment, or especially if you're ordering pallets. We have some friends that, they run a lot of really big feeders. When they're ordering corn or pellets or whatever, they're going through pallets at a time. So, making sure you have your orders synced up with potentially how often, you're running out, so you can time it so you're not ever out. But also, you have everything on standby. So that's super handy for the guys that are in that position that want to feed and maybe want to have a little more streamlined application of be able to do it as effectively as possible without having a lot of headache.
100%. And it's very cost effective. I mean, we sell that universal kit. We also sell one pre-installed in a Pro Hunter 2 kit. So you can literally just twist that onto your existing Moultrie feeder. And then we have like an all-in-one kit. So if you're buying a new feeder, you can buy the hopper, the kit, all that together. And I think for the monthly, data fee for that, it's like $5 or $6 too. It's super affordable. Or if you buy it for the year, the annual plan, I think it's like $50. So it's a very affordable option, to your point, to allow you to know what's going on with your feeders, when you need to take care of them, and all those things. And the worst thing about a feeder, if you're hunting over them, is going to hunt a feeder that's not been throwing. It's a pretty boring sit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andrew, you got anything?
That's all I got.
Okay, awesome. Mark, is there anything else that we're missing before we wrap up with this segment?
Gosh, no, I think we've covered it all. If your listeners like saving money, like, go right now and look at the Edge cameras, Edge Pro, because like you said, man, this is the best deal of the year going on. I think it's through the end of this month too. So yeah, don't delay.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap up this segment and this podcast for this Thursday episode of the Southern Outdoorsman. So we appreciate everybody tuned in to listen and watch this interview again with Mark Olis from Moultrie Mobile. If you have any other questions, feel free to write those in. We have the link down below in the show description, the video description of this podcast. Specifically, write in your questions. If you have any thoughts on the AI software that Moultrie Mobile is using, or any other technical questions, we'll make sure we answer those on future episodes. So we thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, and we'll catch you back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.